So the show on Netflix dropped this Friday called Away. What this show is about is this mother who has to leave her husband and her daughter to go into space for 2 years. And kind of the emotions and what goes on with that is what this show is about. I was late to review this because I usually review Netflix stuff on Saturday, but it took me a while to get through this, and I'll explain why in a minute. But it's really nice to see a film, or not a film, a TV show feature space in less of an American light. Like, you see a lot of diverse groups of people from different cultures and different stuff. That is really fantastic. We don't see that in movies and shows very often. I think that's really well done. I think all the performances here are absolutely incredible. Absolutely terrific performances. I nearly teared up at certain points throughout the show because the performances were incredibly well done. And the effects at times can be hit or miss, but for the most part, they're legitimately incredible for the type of budget this show had and what it's doing. I think it's incredibly well done. Now let's talk about what I didn't like about the show, because all that stuff was fantastic. But this should have been a 2-hour movie. So have you ever noticed before that people who make Netflix shows are like, it's an 8-hour movie. And it's like, well, there's a reason it's not an 8-hour movie. This is why you don't make an 8-hour movie. Because you're just stretching garbage out. This has some great emotional scenes, some great moments, some great character ideas, and things that it wants to do with its characters and emotions it wants to put its characters through. But it's so stretched out that I legitimately constantly checked out because I kept going, okay, when's something going to happen? I went through the first 5 episodes and said, okay, good. That was good for what it was, but you need to speed things up. And if you don't speed things up for the last half of the show, this show that could have been great is just fine. And being fine isn't like an awful thing, but it's just like, well, is that what I want? I want more out of the show because it could have been so good and it just wasn't, because the pacing here is awful. You constantly have moments where you see a 5-minute scene in a movie that's stretched out to be 10, 15 minutes. Why? Why are we doing this? We are constantly stretching moments out. There are moments to this that is just ridiculously slow. And I like slow moving movies, like 2001: Space Odyssey, one of my favorite movies. For crying out loud, a movie that majority of people hated last year was one of my favorite movies of the year. Of last year, Ad Astra. I like slow-paced movies. So that's not a problem to me. What is a problem is when you get a movie or show like this that that it just could have been so much quicker, and then they just kept slowing it down. And it felt very slow. It felt very monotonous. I just wanted to just turn it off at several points, but I kept going because there was so much good about it that I really wanted to like it, and I just couldn't. It's not an awful show by any means. It's fine. I think just if they had not made this a show and just made this a 2.5-hour movie, cut out some little things that don't need to be there and shorten down the pacing a lot, and then you could have had a great 2-hour movie about this mother leaving her daughter and her husband behind, going into space, and kind of exploring what goes on with that in a great 2.5-hour movie. As it is right now, it is a fine show that could have been significantly better had it not been a show.